everyone, welcome to session 6 of Raise More Funds. We are now going to talk about schedules and systems and calendars. Now this might not be the most exciting part of fundraising, but it's certainly one of the most important. It's about that process, right? The process. You've got to have the process. You can have all those savvy marketing materials you want. You can have an amazing pitch, amazing story brand. If you don't have the process to follow up with a supporter, to move a supporter from $25 to then $50 to $100 to $1,000 to $10,000, you're not going to be successful. So you've got to take care of some of the back house things. And sometimes it can be really painful to do it. So if you're not a detail-oriented person, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to learn to be, or you're going to have to hire someone who's detail-oriented. So we're going to talk about this last step of process. Establish your calendars and your systems. So we're going to first talk about a solicitation schedule. So when you decide which revenue channels you want to use, whether it's mail, major giving, phone, events, you got to set up at the beginning of the year, you have your own schedule. You're going to know what themes are coming up, right? So in January in the Pro-Life Movement, we always have a big theme. Everybody everywhere has a big theme in December and November. That's end of year giving. Okay. At the end of November, you're going to be talking about Giving Tuesday, which is always the first Tuesday of December. Then your mail in December is going to be talking about your end of year pitch. That's going to be a big deal. Maybe there's a big event that happens in May of every year. And so when you're coming up with your calendar, you're going to think about where do I raise the most money? What months do I raise the most money? Why is that? What are some themes that we really need to hit upon? I work with students, so September is a big theme for me of back to school, all the changes we've made, all the challenges we're facing. Every April, for example, I have tons of legal cases and vandalization. Something about the end of the school year brings out lots of vandalizations. So I know my April letter has got to be something about responding to what people who disagree with us are doing to us on campuses. Create that solicitation schedule. The schedule is going to be helpful for you and kind of making sure you and your team knows when things are due. You can get really complicated with your schedules. You can say, okay, this is when the first draft of the letter is due. This is when so-and-so is going to approve the draft. This is when we're going to finalize the letter. This is when we're going to pull the list out of the database. This is where we're going to get the copy to the printer. This is when the printer is going to finish printing by. This is when the printer is going to ship the letter by. That can get very complicated, but it may be necessary for you to make sure you know when your letters are going out, because you definitely want to make sure you're leaving enough time in between your letters. You have 3 weeks is probably the minimum amount of time you can leave between your fundraising letters. I think I do 4 weeks right now. Sometimes I'll do 3 depending on what's going on, depending on how many letters I want to push out in a year. If I want to get out 12 letters, I'm doing 4 weeks. But then if I want to sneak it up to maybe 14 letters because I think I'm going to get a higher return, I've got to figure out how to make that work with a calendar. Calendars are going to be very important. It's going to help you. You got to get it to whoever is going to be helping you in the process, especially if you're talking about mail, because it is such a time-consuming process. Phones, if you've got volunteers coming in, you're going to need to know, all right, I want to do a phone-a-thon at the end of November, beginning of December, for end of year. And then we have this big thing coming in March for our gala. We're going to want to raise funds. So we're going to need to do a phone-a-thon in February and get ticket sales, get people supporting us, buying tables. So know what's going on, because you're going to have to make plans to make sure you can execute all of these amazing things, ideas you've had. All right, so let's jump over to thank you and cultivation schedule, okay? So this is very important. You need to thank a donor multiple times. It's just like in campaigning. I think they say in campaigning, you want to touch a voter like 7 times. Like they need to see their TV ad, they need a direct mail piece, they need a door knock, a couple phone calls. You want to be able to thank a donor multiple times. So you should have a process for this within within your organization. You should have an SOP, standard operating procedure, for what your thank you process is. If it's online and use a system like WebConnects, they're going to send out they'll get an automatic thank you on the page. Then they're going to get an automatic thank you email. Well, then maybe for your online donors, then you're going to mail them. Maybe you mail them a thank you letter. Maybe you don't send them a thank you letter because you're like, well, they got the email, I don't have to do that. But then maybe they should get a handwritten letter. Or depending on how much they've given, maybe they should get a phone call. So you're going to want to set up the process. And the process is going to vary depending on the channel they've come in and then how much they gave. Folks who've given, what you qualify to be a major gift. So if the major gift in your organization is $1,000, folks who give them $1,000, they should get a handwritten card. If this is the first time they've ever given $1,000, that means they've just been upgraded. They've gone from a mid-level or low-dollar donor. They've been upgraded to a major dollar donor. And now they're going to be on someone's caseload, your major giving caseload. You're going to have to make sure that you treat them different and you give them kind of a special recognition that they're now on this upper echelon of support. So that's going to make sure you're going to have multiple thank you touches, printed out, handwritten, emails, calls. If you use a database, an email database, or either email database or your donor database can do this. Most of the time, both of them can do it. You can set up an automation. So you can set up an automation in your donor database to automatically print out the thank you receipts every 2 weeks from every donor who's been entered into your system. Or maybe that's just part of a daily, weekly, monthly task list you have for your administrative assistant. But you've got to set up a process for the thank yous. For thank yous. Christmas is in July. So I highly encourage you to start in July getting your Christmas plans together. So are you going to do a personal Christmas card? If you are, do you need a staff photo? You better take it in the summer. Get it printed because you're going to want to start hand addressing. We hand address all Christmas cards to our supporters. I personally did about 500 last year, my own. So we do a few thousand of them, hand addressed Christmas cards. I go back and forth between using a pre-printed Christmas card that's just a very generic Christmas card, and then I kind of insert a photo of my family and I handwrite a letter to our supporter. Or we can do a picture of our staff and then maybe make it more of like, more SFLA branded. We also do different types of Christmas. So depending on your level, if you're a major donor, you're going to get a handwritten card. If you're a mid-level donor, you're going to get a postcard. If you're a high-level donor, you're going to get a custom Christmas gift, something that I've kind of come up with this year. I think I did coffee brewed by monks, or I did some religious socks that are really cute. Or I might do for my mid-level donors or my high-level donors who I don't know well, who I don't have a relationship with. I might just do an ornament or something that's flat that can be mailed cheaply. So there's different things you need to do, but Christmas is a big time because a large majority of, potentially a large majority of your income can come in over those last 2 or 3 months of the year. And just December alone can raise a third or a quarter of your income. So Christmas is a big deal. You definitely want to be on folks' minds throughout the whole giving season. Another cultivation piece to keep in mind is the welcome series. So the average retention rate, meaning supporters who give once and then give again, is only about 45.5%. So only 45.5% of folks who donate to a nonprofit will donate again. That's a huge waste when you consider how long and how much it took you to get that person to give to you in the first place. So you want to increase your retention rate, meaning supporters who gave last year, they give this year. You can do that by creating a welcome series of sending, new supporters a welcome letter, thanking them for joining in the mission, giving them more history of the organization, more of a glimpse. Maybe they get an annual report in the mail, or maybe they get a condensed version of your annual report. Do something to welcome them. Maybe you send them a magnet. I have a series. It's a letter. Then based on how much they gave, it can be a call. It can be a handwritten note. It can be a series of things. It's not just one. Anniversaries. You can also do anniversaries. That's another retention gift idea or letter idea for someone who's just hit their 2-year anniversary or their 5-year anniversary or their 10-year anniversary. What are you doing special to acknowledge their investment in your mission? Maybe it's a mug, maybe it's a t-shirt. Think about what you can do to send them a letter to acknowledge that you've been paying attention and you're so thankful that they continue to support you year over year over year, because those are folks that have high affinity for you. So when you get down to here, when we talk about legacy giving, right? Those folks who give year over year over year, even if it's a low dollar amount, maybe $50 a month, $100 a month, these are going to be your people that potentially leave those planned gifts, those legacy gifts, because they are invested in your mission. They read every letter you send, every email you send. So make sure you think of things that you can do that increase that retention rate. Phone calls, handwritten letters, anything personal. Anytime you can get the leader of the organization, the executive director, the vice president in front of the donor to build that relationship, that is going to be important. Okay? Very, very important. The next thing I want to talk about is administrative and legal requirements. Okay, so you have to send out a receipt. If you're a 501c3, you need to send out a receipt every year, an annual receipt to donors who gave $250 or more. You have to do that. That's something that needs to go on your calendar to do that every January. You also need to have monthly reporting of your income, right? And your expenses, because that's going to have to go over to your accountant or whoever handles your funds. Get you ready for your audit. Something you need to think about too for your financial audit. If you get a donation, I know our auditor for years has always said they want to see copies of any donation, of checks that have come in there over $5,000. If a foundation does give you an award, save that foundation letter for your financial audit. Charitable licenses. So this is something a lot of people don't know about, but if you hire a direct mail firm, if you hire a telemarketing firm, they should require you to get charitable licenses in any of the states that they're prospecting supporters. In fact, you should have the charitable license, even if you're a local group and you're just focusing on your, in your community for funds, you need to have the charitable license for your state. There's some states that make it really onerous. Some states are very easy. There's organizations out there. We work with a legal group that kind of files all of the charitable licenses. I think last time I checked, it was like 36 states out of 50 require nonprofits to file a charitable license. Some of them are very easy. It's like, here's our organization, here's our purpose, here's our revenue. Others can be a pain in the butt, and you can get fined. So I've gotten fined. Students for Life America has gotten fined for not filling these out in time. Usually what happens is someone was responsible for the task and then didn't turn in the paperwork on time and was delayed because they were waiting for a number from somebody to fill out a form. And in the meantime, they get a complaint, and then they will actually fine you. And so then you have to go back and try to negotiate and say, wait a minute, I filled it out and you rejected the form. I was trying to get more information for you. How can you find me? So charitable licenses. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to Google it, okay, right now. Database and other systems. All right, so a couple of things we're going to talk about. I'm going to get into a moves management system here, but database. I'm going to give you a recommendation for the database that we're using at Students for Life called Virtuous. I really do like their system. They have a lot of automations that you can build in, meaning that, it'll send auto emails if someone hasn't given in a while, or if you want to send auto thank you emails or auto, emails to if you have people's birth dates recorded, which is good for you if you have that recorded in your data. It can do that. I do like their system. I've used a lot of systems. I've custom built systems before. So far, I do like that system. So I would recommend that to you. There are a lot of fundraising systems out there. You need to be very careful when you kind of sign that contract with those database systems. Talk to people who have those systems, because every system has cons. Every single system has cons. And you need to figure out, are those cons something that you can live with or something you can't live with? That's really what you need to investigate. One of the biggest things I would suggest when you're talking about fundraising database, you need to find out how data enters into that system. I had once a database I paid a lot of money to develop, and then we got into the system, and I had to pay a developer to take our old data and format it, get a system, and it was going to be perfect, whatever. The data firm we used that the database company recommended to put our data in did a terrible job. There was duplicates. It was a disaster. Thousands and thousands of duplicates. And then we realized getting data into the system was nearly impossible. They wanted us to print a barcode, which would have meant when we were caging checks, we'd have to have a barcode scanner. It was super high. I mean, it was almost impossible. And then to not do that, you had to, every single week when we went to upload data, we had to download the data into Microsoft Access, run something. Then we had to take our data, mesh it together, find the IDs, and then we had to add the IDs to the account. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. So make sure you have a good system that you can add data quickly to. And that's also really good and intuitive about getting rid of duplicates, or at least identifying duplicates that then your team can go with eyes and figure out, oh, this is the same person. This had a misspelling here. Payment processing. I mentioned Cornerstone earlier. That's a group that Brendan, I think, is the vice president of external affairs, something. So Cornerstone's great because they do all of our processing. So we use Web Connects to do the front system of the landing page for our fundraising pages or for our event pages that we do. I think they also do if you have marathons, things like that, they have a whole system for that. But then Cornerstone is this little key you put in. They're kind of like the bank behind it, making sure I'm not paying 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% on every donation, which is a waste of supporter funds. Caging. So I don't know if you know this term, but caging is an important part of your process. What is your SOP for checks? Are checks coming right to your office? Are they going to a PO box address? Are you going to hire out this to a company? So I have caging companies who the mail goes to the caging company, their staff opens it up, they enter it into a database, they deposit the money directly into my checking account for me. I get a daily report of here's how many pieces of mail we got. We got 700 pieces of mail. 600 of them had donations in them. Here's all the contact information for the donors. Here's how much they gave. And here's all the people who didn't donate or non-donors, but that sent back a petition. So caging is important. You've got to have a cager you trust. If you cage in-house, which I'm moving back to doing, you've got to have people who are there, who can get your data into your database, who are trustworthy. And that might mean hiring someone to just do that. All right, so that was a little bit of the administrative back-end stuff. I actually want to do a whole module on this because we have calendars that I've developed and standard operating procedures, and there's just so much that goes into these process systems. I could talk about this for hours because if you got to get these processes lined up because you're going to get busy. You know how busy you are. You're going to be out doing your thing. But if these processes aren't in place, it doesn't matter how awesome this pitch is if you can't follow up the supporter, or if the supporter gets angry because they didn't get thanked properly or quickly enough. You gotta have your systems in place and gotta have your house in order. And sometimes it can take days of figuring out the process. Okay, if a donation comes here, it's going to go here. All right, on every Friday, we're going to take all of the donations that are in the Excel sheets and we're going to batch upload them. Then on Mondays, we're going to go through and make sure there's no duplicates from that data. And then on Tuesdays, we're going to print out thank you letters for all of those folks that have been entered in the database. And on Friday, we're going to do thank you calls to everybody who we have phone numbers for that we send out a thank you letter on Tuesday. And then next Monday, we're going to do a thank you email. So you've got to kind of have this process and it just keeps going and going and going and going. Okay? All right. The last thing I want to talk about in this session, and I didn't get to it in the Choose Your Revenue channels simply because we had a lot to go through, but this kind of goes in with your major giving. And so this is what I wanted to talk to you about. So let's see here. I'm going to move over here. Moves management. So this is about your major giving. This is how you track your major givers, and you're going to track what your moves are. So it's basically a system for you to track your touches because and we talked about this, major giving is about relationship. And these relationships take time, and you're going to need different touches to get these folks, on board with your mission, especially if they're prospects. It might be a phone call, and there might be an email, then it might be a letter. We actually have a system, for how we want to get meetings with supporters. So supporters that we've never met before. Well, we have an automation in our database. We send out a letter and say, hey, so-and-so is going to be in your area around this date. Would you like to meet? And then after that letter, we send an email. After that email, we send a phone call. And if we still haven't heard from them, we might send them another letter and another email. So it's like a 5 or 6 step process just to get meetings with our major supporters. These are supporters that we know they have the capacity based on the research we've done, or we know they have capacity based on a previous gift. So these are supporters we want to get to and we want to meet with, because major giving, you can have the high dollar mail, and you can do a phone call, but major giving really is about getting in front of those supporters and having meetings and personally making the ask. And that can be, I know it can be scary, but it really isn't. If you have the passion and you have that organizational one-pager, and you have your story brand down, the hardest part of major gift fundraising, to be honest with you, is going to just be getting the meeting and getting the meeting set up and getting them confirmed and making sure, they don't forget about it or move your meeting at the last moment. It's just like direct mail, where direct mail, your number one thing is about getting folks to open the envelope. With major giving, it's about getting the meeting. And then when you're in the meeting, you can listen for the gift. You have this conversation, a back and forth. You hear about their passion. You hear about why they're investing in your mission, what they hope your organization will accomplish. And then you can share about where you've come from and what you've done, your successes, and what's really at stake, what the urgency is and where you're going. And then you can make that ask. If it's the first time you met with somebody, don't make an ask. Just get them excited, get them keyed up, and then make a date with them for another meeting, or set up some action. We always have an action, but maybe it's that first time you don't make a financial ask. But when you have these donors, you're gonna have to figure out where to do with them. How are you going to track these major donors and how you're doing in your relationships with them? Are you building a relationship? Have you forgotten that person existed for 2 months? You need to you need to send them an email. You need to have them a call. And these are personal. These relationships are personal. So there's, you might say, okay, I'm going to email everybody on my caseload, my major giving caseload, my moves tracker, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to do that once a month. Great. That sounds good. But that can't be your only touch. If you want to send them a newsletter that's different from your low dollar, make sure it's different. If you want to send them a custom, and top investor newsletter, that sounds great. But you're going to have to do more than that. And the moves tracker is where you can keep track of everything. It's hard. So moves tracker is basically you're pulling information out of your database. So your contact ID, their giving history. So what did they give in 2018? What did they give in 2019? This is a good way to know, like, this is a retained donor. So this is a donor that gave in 2018, they gave in 2019, we've retained them. Or they're acquired donor. They were new last year because look, they gave $0 in 2018, but they gave $10,000 in 2019. So they're acquired donor. Then you can look at what their current year giving is. All right, so Sally McTester gave $75,000. Then she gave $80,000. This year she gave $40,000. So right now I'm at $40,000. So I need at least, just to say that, she's giving the same amount, I need to get in front of her. I need to make that ask so Sally McTester can have that opportunity to invest $40,000. And my goal will really be to upgrade her, to move her from $80,000 to $90,000. So we know right now she's a retained donor. We haven't lost her because she's continued to give money this year from last year. But the difference, we've got to fundraise that difference. Same deal. So this is Joe Testy. So Joe gave $10,000 last year. It was an acquired donor, newly acquired donor. He got automatically put onto my caseload because in my fake organization here, anyone who gives $1,000 or more in a single gift will be added to a caseload, or my caseload. But right now he's a lost donor because he hasn't renewed. He hasn't given that $10,000 yet. Now maybe he just gave it in December, so it's not really a problem, but you want to keep an eye on that. You're going to want to make sure you meet with him. Make sure you talk to him. Make sure you get a renewal for his commitment this year. So you'll keep the contact information. This is important because this is how you're going to contact them, right? Spouse email is important as well. Home phone, cell phone. This is where you're going to have historical information. What was their first gift date? What was the amount that they gave? What was the prompt? So what was the mail code? So when you're doing direct mail, when you're putting them into your system, every database, you're going to have a code so you can keep track of where that gift came from. Remember my little tracker, the development tracker? Well, you're going to have codes for all of this. So it might be, miscellaneous might be 0620, so June 20, miscellaneous, MISC. So there's your code in database. Okay, that was a miscellaneous donation that came in June 2020. Online, it might be 06, .20 email. If you want to get sophisticated and have blue books, and we can talk about this later, then you can actually start having codes for every single email that you send. Every landing page you create will have its own code. So it might be, 060120 abortion stops a beating heart campaign. And the codes can get long. You can make them shorter with acronyms, but just make sure if you shorten your codes, make sure you have a key so you can remember what those codes stand for. Trust me. So you can get sophisticated with your codes. Your mail, you should at the very least, have a code that's the month, the date, and for the mail package. And if it was a low dollar package, or if you're doing the high dollar package, you need to note that. You can also get into the segmentation on the mail, where it can be this was the select I pulled. It was all donors 0 to 12 months who gave $10 to $50. And then, so that's one unique code. And then another code could be $0 to $12, 0 to 12 months, people who gave $51 or $50.01 to $100. And then you can have different codes. And that way, when the reply device comes back, and on the bottom of the reply device in tiny print, you already have written, mail merged in, what their code should be, okay? So the person caging in that donation will say, okay, so Sally McTester is given $100. All right, the code here is 060120 low A. So meaning this was the June low dollar, and she was the select A, which you have your little key in the database, so select A means that was my major dollar donors. Oh, that's select. So then you can be really, really complex with your data, because you can say, not only did this piece of mail work and this letter worked, but you can say this group of people, this group of donors, this letter worked best for them. This letter worked best for my new donors who have just joined us, have just joined our house file, but have given large amounts of money. They're major donors. But this letter didn't work so well for low dollar donors who, may only give $25. Maybe my ask was too high. Now, that's the other thing is when you do those letters, the ask can be a standard ask. You can ask for $50, $75, $100 or whatever. Whatever way you've kind of monetized your mission. If you want to say, start this to train one woman or support a woman, this is what I need, and then kind of divide it out by half or whatever. But you can also get more sophisticated because you're mail merging anyway. You can do an HPC ask, highest previous contribution ask. So when you're pulling your data, you can say, for your mailing list, you can say, I want everyone's contact information to mail the letter, but I also want to know what their HPC is. And so when you do your fundraising letter, your mail merge, your ask can be their HPC, their highest previous contribution, or you say, you always give 3 options. So HPC, or HPC times 1.5, or HPC times 2. So if their previous donation was $10, you'd say, can you today give a gift of $10, $15, $20, because that helps you upgrade that supporter, because you want to be upgrading that supporter, because you want to move that supporter, right, from down here to up here. You want to continue to move them up. So that's why this highest previous contribution is important. It's important when you pull your direct mail data, but you're going to want this all on your moves tracker, because this is going to be key for you when you or one of your team members starts to build relationships. You're going to want to have access to all this data when they're calling Sally McTester to thank her for her gift. They're going to want to know this information. So this is everything. This is kind of what I do for my moves tracking. I have a spreadsheet of all of our top supporters or my top prospects, folks who I think, don't give, but could be aligned to give. And those are the folks that I'm building relationships with. And then I have other staff members who have other caseloads as well. I have the highest dollar supporters on my caseload. And then we kind of have it tiered off. So we have, Kristen's caseload, and I have someone else's caseload and someone else's caseload. And I give them, I assign the supporters that relationship to them based on their giving level. If I have a previous relationship with a donor, I may not assign it, even if they don't meet the threshold for whatever my threshold might be. I'll probably leave them on my caseload because I'm going to continue to build a relationship with them because I've already started to build a relationship. So this is a really important kind of back office way for you to keep track of your major givers. Like I said, I'm going to do a whole module on major giving because there's so much to go over. How do you get those meetings? How do you organize your meetings? What do you do when you just want to build a relationship or you don't want to ask them for money? So what are the different kind of touch points you can do with these major donors to continue to build a relationship with them throughout the year, especially if they're an annual donor who always really going to give to you once a year. You need to make sure throughout the year you're touching base with them and that they know you're busy, that you're having success, that they feel a part of your mission. So there's a lot that I can go over with major giving, but I have to stop. But I do hope to kind of come back at some point and do just a module just on major giving because major giving is a huge portion of your fundraising efforts. For many organizations, major giving can be the most of your funds will come from major givers. I try to keep my major giving income around the same as my direct mail income, just because, like I said earlier, I want to make sure when there's an economic downturn or something happens, like COVID-19, I want to make sure I've got enough kind of that breadth of supporters who can kind of keep us sustained, and that we're not too reliant on one person's gifts. But this is hard. When we started Students for Life, we had one supporter. And that supporter funded everything. And I had to quickly go from one supporter to thousands of supporters to keep our organization going, sustaining the operation level, but also growing it. So, all right, we're going to come back and I'm going to talk about the donor giving levels, life cycle, and donation types. And so we're almost done with our Raise More Funds. I hope you're getting a lot of good ideas out of this. I hope I organized it well for you, but I'm definitely going to make sure I'll include this sample moves tracker for you in the documents so you'll have access to it later.